Carl.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
I want to thank you for taking the time and coming for this interview. And so this position that we're going to be interviewing you for is the Education and Training Specialist. You've had the opportunity to look at the job description.
Yes, I have, yeah.
So I'll just outline how this interview works. We have a set of questions that we ask each candidate. The questions are based on technical competency as well as behavioral competencies. We will take notes along the way. So I'll be taking notes along the way, and you will have an opportunity to ask us questions at the end of the interview. If during the interview you feel like you need some further clarification on the questions, feel free to ask us. And when we come to the behavioral competency questions, we are definitely looking for you to provide an example or situation of how you demonstrate the behaviors, what was the situation about, what was the result, and the outcome at the end of that experience.
Okay, that sounds
Okay, so we're just going to start with the opening question is, tell us what interested you in this position and how it fits with your overall career plans.
So I think what interested me in this position was that it combines a few different passions that I have in one job. So the technological passion, I love computers and I love online learning. I love processing information through and communicating using technology, and it has that with the online learning. Education, I loved being a teacher. I was a teacher at university for 5 years and
that's great.
just loved it. I won an award as the best to Excellence in Teaching Award for my department 2 years in a row. And so I love getting back into that education field. And then finally the research, and specifically the topic of research, which is lands.
Yes, oh that's great. That was really good. I think that's a good explanation of why you like to, want this job and how it fits into your overall career plan. Now we're going to just switch to the technical competencies. Okay. So tell us what you know about the core business of environment and sustainable resource development and the division itself, operations.
So I'm a little bit new to government. I'm still finding my way around. However, I have been working in human resources in environment and sustainable resource development. So I do get to see a little bit about what the business does, but I'm very separated from the line area. But I know that air, land, water, and biodiversity are the core business, so anything that really impacts those. And the department has moved towards an integrated resource management system, where all of these things are looked at from a cumulative point of view, and there's a lot more coordination between the different sectors. So I think that's really something very interesting and very, very core to the way that this department works.
Great. So the second technical question is, describe your research methods.
My research method, because I have an MA, so I am academically trained, I will always start with a literature review. But in the GOA environment, that needs to be a little bit flexible with that. The literature review may well be what are other departments doing about this particular thing. Where are the big successes in other parts of either the public service, other public service bodies, or in the GOA and other departments. So depending on the research question, I would say that the first thing is a broad literature review or look around to see what else is out there. Once I've got there, I want to define my research question. And that's where I really ask myself, am I looking at best practices? Am I looking at what do I do? How do I do a certain project? Or am I really looking for some academic literature? I want to define the cutting edge, and I also want to define what the known area of research is.
That's very good. So we're just going to switch over to the next. Now we're going to switch gears and we're going to ask you behavioral competency questions. So the behaviors that we indicated in the job posting, one of them is system thinking. So tell us about a time when you took specific action to inform your colleagues of the relationship between your work and the work of others.
When I first started in this role, I was carrying over from my administrative role the job of updating the website. However, when I took over in this HR 2 role, I found that because we'd had a merger, the updates to the website were no longer possible, and our whole web system had changed. At that point, I had to connect my work to the work of everybody else in the branch, and in fact in the department. So the first thing I had to do was to go to all the different places in the branch that had been generating web content under the previous system. And I had to find out what those content needs were, which ones were being met under the previous system, and which ones were not. Then I had to go to communications and work with their internal web services to build us a new system from scratch. In doing so, I had to then communicate with all the admins who access that information around ESRD and the managers who have that access that information to let them know where the new information was. So it ended up being a full department communication effort.
Okay, so what was the outcome at the end of that?
The
project?
outcome was that it's still very much in progress, but we do have, and I'm very proud of this, HR has more information on the web. People can access our programs and services more so than any other internal facing body inside ESRD. So we have managed our internal website is really quite robust, and people know where to go when they need the information that they need.
Okay, great. That was good. So the next competency is creative problem solving. So tell us about a time when gaining different perspective on an issue enabled you to find the right solution, not just the obvious one.
I was tasked with creating a conference once a year for admin professionals
Okay.
called the Admin Summit. And
Which I think is still going on.
it is still going on. However, the idea was to engage admin. But admin were, despite the summit, becoming more and more angry and less engaged. And what feedback I was hearing, I sort of designed a feedback tool that they were able to give some suggestions about what they were looking for. And what I found was that although they loved the conference and they loved having a day off and good food and laughing together and meeting each other, they loved the networking, they weren't being given the tools to do their work. And so they felt that they were being given a party before they were being given their meat and potatoes. And they really wanted to do their work and take pride in their work. So what I did was I defined the need for a mechanism for admin to communicate between themselves in their community. And then I launched a community of practice. I partnered with corporate services.
Okay.
Together we created a community of practice. We got executive sponsors, we got a budget, and we have launched the community of practice, which is a mechanism for admin to communicate within their peer community and help them get the answers they need to do their work.
Great. Well, that was a very good conference, I believe. I had good reviews about the conference.
We've had excellent reviews about the conference, and we have a much happier admin force than we did a year ago.
Good to know. So the next question is talking about building collaborative environment. So describe a situation where you were successful in getting people to work together effectively. And, from all the example, I can see that, but I just want to see how you demonstrate those behaviors in your day-to-day work.
I'm going to go back to a previous job for this because I really had a tough challenge in the job that I had before here, getting people to work together. I had discovered through my research that best practices for an urban environment for revitalizing a downtown was to have a business improvement area. The problem was that in my city, a business improvement area had been tried and had failed and had left bitter
And which city are you
sensations.
talking
This
about?
is Victoria, BC.
Okay.
So we wanted to revitalize our downtown. We knew that this was the way, but there was a huge amount of negative feeling about it amongst business owners. And so what happened was we had to have focus groups, we had to have a really wide net. We actually had to go beyond just the targeted group and change attitudes of people around in the community. So we ended up engaging through various different engagement methods, everything from focus groups to surveys to contests to going into schools, and ended up engaging, at the end of the day, we had engaged 50,000 people.
Wow.
We were able to overcome the resistance, we were able to turn it around, we were able to build a model that people felt comfortable with, and we have a very active and very vibrant business improvement area now, and we incubated the project, and we still pay half their rent.
Oh wow, that's excellent. Great. So we're just going to go to the very last question. And this is talking about developing network, because as you know, this position is very much interacting with people within various stakeholders and with various divisions, and integrating that education component to this job. So describe a situation in which you develop an effective win-win relationship with a stakeholder or client. How did you go about building that relationship?
I'm going to go back to the admin community of practice for this, because the first step was engaging corporate services. Corporate services has what I would call a mixed history of getting along with HR. And so the first thing that I had to do was find a partnership inside of corporate services that really, really worked for us. I was able to locate a good person for me to work with and obtain permission from that person's boss to work with them. We had a good connection, and it was a great place to start. From there, she branched out into her network, I branched out into mine. We kept on an informal relationship going, as well as a professional relationship, because the relationship between the two of us was the core that everything else was founded on, and we always had to be on the same page. So we would go for drinks after work, or we would go for lunch together, but we always made sure to engage each other socially as well. And then as other people stepped up to become foundational members of the admin community practice, we were able to include them in those social activities. And so we did things like planned workshops after work.
So you kept the relationship going after work as well, too.
Absolutely, and that became a dear friendship, and put us in a very strong position for being able to include others.
Great, thank you. Well, that wraps up our interview question, and I'm sure you probably have some questions for me as well. And I want to just take the time to thank you once again for coming and attending this interview, and hopefully we'll be in touch with you. We'll have to verify, your academic credential, check your references, and so it'll take at least a good 2 weeks to get back to the candidates. So we'll let you know one way or the other if you were successful or not in this competition. And thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity.
Nice meeting you.
Bye-bye.